We're the Plotaholics, ripping plots apart for you.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
Hey everybody, welcome to another special edition of the Plotaholics podcast. I'm Shane Wilson, and that groovy fellow over there is Brian Tan, who has apparently eaten an animal cracker that gives him special funk powers.
That is right. I have the funk in my trousers for sure.
Today, Brian, we are joined by Mr. Scott Christian Sava, who is the writer-director of Netflix original animated film, big hit over there, Animal Crackers. So let's bring in Mr. Sava. Scott, welcome.
Hey, how you guys doing?
So I've been looking a little bit at your story, Scott, and I think that I'm jealous of it.
I have to admit that I have a little bit of a green monster running around in my head as well.
Well,
yeah.
When you say the story, you mean all the bad stuff that happens or the good stuff?
well, I'm really talking about your personal story and your personal
okay.
rise to Netflix royalty, because you're published author. You have books out through Macmillan. Animal Crackers itself is actually based on a graphic novel, right? That you published with those folks. You've worked on the Power Rangers. You've done work for X-Files, and you've worked for Marvel. I mean, your career is pretty wild. Can you talk a little bit about how you got into the business?
Yeah.
And,
I mean, go ahead.
Just the how you got in and how you got to this point.
Yeah, it's a bit of a story. You got time?
Yeah. Oh, we got time.
Yeah, I've got nowhere to be.
Okay. It's funny because I actually started off. My father, we were living in Florida at the time in 1979, and my dad got an offer from Atari Games to go out to California and go work at the peak time, that they were doing the Atari 2600 games. And so we went out there, and so I'd get to go and visit all the time. And I guess my first cool thing that happened to me was I would be there. I mean, what kid wouldn't want to go to Atari? And my dad was working in the coin-op games for the arcades, and I would be there all summer long. And one day they asked my dad, look, if your kid's going to come, have him bring his bicycle. And so we did, and I brought my bike, and they had me out in the parking lot, and they videoed me, like, just, okay, now do this, now go over this jump, now throw this over here, now throw this over there, and do this and do that. And I did that it was fun, for a couple hours, and then I got to go play more video games and totally forgot about it. A few years later, I was in high school, and I went to a 7-Eleven, and there was this game, Paperboy. And I went, oh my God, that's me.
You're Paperboy? Oh my God.
Paperboy.
That is awesome.
I used to wear my hat backwards and everything. And that was they're like, well, we got this kid who's here all the time. Let's just rotoscope him for the animators, and we'll get all the motion right and everything. And so they were up high so they can get that nice 3/4 view. And it's not like anybody told me. It was just, I just had to find out.
You're just like, all these adults are filming me riding my bicycle.
Yeah.
and for you kids, see, I was born in 79. So for all you kids, life was actually 8-bit back then.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Just like when I was a kid and I would see pictures of my mom and everyone from back in the 40s, 50s and all that. I'm like, was life black and white?
Everything was black and white. Yeah. Color wasn't invented, just in general. But yeah, so I went to, when I graduated high school, I went to art school. I went to the Academy of Art in San Francisco, and I was an illustration major, and all I wanted to do was Spider-Man. Like, I just wanted to get the job being the artist of Spider-Man on the comic book. And I would go to convention after convention. I would get turned down. I just didn't have the right style because I was more of an illustrator, not a comic book guy. And as much as I loved comics, I could never really pick up the style, and I really don't draw well out of my head. I always use photo reference, and my junior year, my dad saw an ad for interns at Sega of America. They were doing Sega Genesis games, and so he says, "Why don't you try out?" So I did, and I got the internship, and so my first introduction into games was working on a game called Kid Chameleon for the Sega Genesis, and so
another one of my favorites.
Yeah, it was fun. I got to work on the Samurai was the one I remember the most. I think I even have a picture of some of my work that I took. I had to take it with a film camera, take a picture of the screen, to have any proof that I did it. And then after that, I did a couple little jobs here and there after graduation, and then I actually got a job as a game designer at Atari Games back where my dad used to work, and so I was a game designer. My first game that I worked on as an artist, because I was a game designer, but they were having, since I was also an artist, they had me work on Guardians of the Hood, and then they asked me to design a game with dinosaurs, and I was into Street Fighter, so I came up with Primal Rage, and
man,
stop motion game, and then I got married, and we moved over to a different game. I was working with Ed Logg, who created Asteroids and Centipede and Gauntlet, and he was looking to do a gun game, and so I came up with a game called Bounty Hunter, which eventually turned into Area 51 at the arcades.
Wow.
And
so you basically worked on a good portion of the video games that I wasted quarters and time on.
I mean, me too.
It's
I
funny
played Area
because
51.
I'm looking at it going, because I never got to finish any of the games. Like I started Kid Chameleon, and then I moved and I graduated school, and then I started Primal Rage, and then I got married and I moved on to Bounty Hunter, and then about a year into Bounty Hunter, Ed Logg moved on, and the whole team kind of moved on to something else. So I moved down to Malibu, down to Los Angeles to work at Malibu Comics, and then somebody else finished up and turned it into Bounty Hunter, into Area 51. So I always feel like I'm not really, I started these things, like, I did the game designs, I did the art, I did all of this, and then I handed it off to somebody else, and then they finished it and they put their name on it. So it never really felt like mine anymore. And
when you got to like sort of the final version of those games and you got to play them, did it still feel like the game that you originally started working on, or had it changed through?
No, they changed a lot. And if you ever get a chance to if you go to Twitter and you just Google S Sava, that's my Twitter, and then Bounty Hunter, I did a whole thread on Bounty Hunter, and you can see the art. It was all comic book characters, and we had people dressed up as different villains and superheroes and whatnot. It was a really, really fun game that got abandoned once I left. And so it was Area 51 is completely, it's just using the same mechanics,
right,
but it's just different. And then Primal Rage was very, very true to Street Fighter 2 as far as all of the gameplay. And then when I moved over, they added a bunch of other stuff to it, which is fine. It was just, again, all of the animation was the same. I still have some of the designs that I did, and whatnot. But originally, when I was designing, it was 2 joysticks, because I like the idea of having different variations to do the special moves and whatnot. But then they changed it to the traditional buttons. But it's just, I look back on my career and I feel like I've started a bunch of stuff, or I kind of dipped my toe in a bunch of things. But, like Power Rangers wasn't something I worked on for my career. It was something I worked on for about a year, and I did different little stuff as work came in. And then, I was just a little cog in a big machine.
Right.
Same thing with Spider-Man. I came in for 4 issues. I got to do it. I got it out of my system and then moved on. Casper, I did those. And so I got to work on a bunch of really fun stuff. But it was funny, up until Spider-Man, all I could care about was Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That was all, it was like, yeah, I'm working on Casper. Yeah, I'm working on Power Rangers, but all I care about is Spider-Man. Yeah. I just wanted to do Spider-Man. And in 2001, I finally got to do that. I got to work on Star Trek comics. I got to meet the cast of Star Trek Voyager. I got to meet the cast of Deep Space Nine. I got to go onto the set, and it was cool. But all I cared about was Spider-Man. That was from when I was a kid. That was all I cared about. Yeah. And then I got to do it, and it was just like, I looked at my wife. I'm like, now what? And then we were just like, I don't know. I mean, we'd been married 9 years at the time. We're like, I guess we might as well have kids. and so
Sounds like a natural progression.
yeah, 9 months
Peter
later,
Parker,
yep,
kids.
exactly. 9 months later, twins, and
Wow.
and we were like, okay, so it was like there was a sense of, okay, I'm 33, 34. I've accomplished my life stream, and I had been rejected every year since I was 17, and I finally got that opportunity. I totally did it to the best of my abilities, and I moved on. And now it was like, okay, I'm going to be a dad, and I wanted to bring my kids. I wanted my kids, of course, they're newborns, but I wanted to read them comic books. And I realized that the comic books in 2002, 2003 were just not really kid friendly. There really wasn't any kid friendly comics. And other than going back to the old comics, I wanted to write something that would be a preschool kind of thing. So I started writing kids comics, and so the boys are 17 now, but I've probably written about 16 or 17 books for them. My grandparents are secret agents, Ed's terrestrials, Pet robots, Cameron and his dinosaurs, Gary the pirate. So just anything that just seemed like a fun thing to do, I would write a story about it, and I had them published by IDW, and we moved out to Franklin, Tennessee, and as I was publishing all of these, studios, Disney, Nickelodeon, MTV, Fox, Universal, they would start optioning the rights to these things because they're like, hey, this is kind of a cool idea. I like this. Hyperactive, a kid whose metabolism goes super fast, and now he's got okay, I like that. So they'd option it. They'd give you like $25,000 a year to hold on to it. So it's like taking it off the market for 3 years while they decide if they want to turn it into a film. And it's not a bad way to make a living, especially if you can get a couple of these going. You're like, that's kind of cool. Yeah. And but
you
after
still
about,
kind of want to see one of these things come to fruition, right?
Yeah. And so it was, I don't know, this was around maybe 2008, 2009. My buddy Kevin Grievous. So Kevin Grievous, he wrote Underworld. And I don't know if you guys.
Yeah, I love Underworld. Matter of fact, when Underworld first came out, see, I was a big Vampire the Masquerade fanatic. So when I heard people because at first I was like, this kind of reminds me of Vampire the Masquerade, only not. And I love this. As a matter of fact, my writing partner Kendra Souter, she met Kevin, I do believe, at a con years ago.
Kevin's a fellow geek. That's how we met. We're just
he actually wrote one of the great black comic book characters that are now in circulation
Blue Marvel.
to this day. Blue Marvel is probably he's Blue Marvel's no Luke Cage, but he's still a badass. And I love him.
Yeah. He wanted to create that iconic Superman character, and he did. And
he's amazing character.
So Kevin is the kind of nerd that can tell you what issue and what page number that. Steve Rogers did this, so he's that kind of, so he's on a different level than me, like I want to do Spider-Man, got it out of my system. He wanted to write for Marvel too, and he got it, and it's never enough. No, I want to write the perfect Thor story. I want to write this. So his entire life will be pursuing writing every character in Marvel universe because he loves it. He just absolutely, but he said to me, why don't you write your own screenplay? Because nothing's ever going to happen in a studio. They're never going to do it. Why don't you write your own screenplay? I go, I went to art school. I don't know anything about writing screenplays. He goes, I went to Howard. I was a microbiology major. He goes, I didn't know anything before I wrote Underworld. He goes, you don't need a degree. You just need to do it. And so he really convinced me to sit down and actually write it. And I did. And somehow it got in front of Harvey Weinstein, and that was just a train wreck. But It got me kind of on the right track of going and saying, I think we can actually make a movie. So we were on food stamps. Our house was in foreclosure, and my wife, she said, I'm going to go back to work because the boys were about 10 at the time, and she goes, I'm going to go back to work so that way you can go and try to make this happen. And she worked for 2 years until we were able to find the money, and suddenly we're making a movie. And so that brings you up to at least Animal Crackers.
Yeah. So originally when you made Animal Crackers, you didn't have a distributor, right? Like you were just.
No, that was the crazy thing was, we found an investor from Korea who gave us $1 million. And then we found another investor from China who gave us $10 million. And so we were going to do it as a low budget direct to DVD movie. It's $11 million. Animation costs $150 million, for the Pixar, Disney kind of stuff.
Right.
So we're like, this is a direct to DVD. It's my first film. I had Tony Bancroft, who directed Mulan. He was going to help me out. He's going to co-direct. I had Dean Lorey, who wrote Arrested Development. He's going to co-write. And we figured, okay, let's give this a shot. Miraculously, we got Carter Goodrich, who designed the characters for Finding Nemo, Ratatouille, Brave, Despicable Me, Monsters Inc., Coco. He had designed all of these. He read the script, loved it, and everybody knew we don't have a lot of money, so if you want to do this, it's going to be very little money. And so everybody who came on board knew I knew that they were doing it because they liked the project, not because we were paying them a lot of money.
Right.
And so we looked at our budget, and we had already worked with Tara Strong and James Arnold Taylor, and we had James's daughter Lydia was already Mackenzie, and so we were looking for maybe just one name that we might be able to put into the movie. So we put together a list. Ian McKellen was in my head. Like Patrick Warburton, we knew we had. So Patrick Warburton and Ian McKellen were the two voices when I was writing it that were in my head. And so I was like, okay, we'll throw in Patrick, Ian McKellen, and casting director's like, yeah, Ian McKellen for,
you're really going to get Gandalf to be in your movie.
Exactly. Well, and Patrick Warburton, like, of course you had him in mind when you wrote that part, because that is
Patrick Warburton.
Isn't
it? I mean, you can't write that character without hearing that voice.
Right.
And so I just to make the casting director happy, because he's like, Ian's not going to say yes. So let's think of what about for Chesterfield, and what about for Bullet Man, and what about for this?
Bullet Man.
So we had a whole bunch of other names we threw in there. And then miraculously, Ian McKellen said yes. And we're like, what? And he's like, yeah, you know that the decimal is over here, not over here. No. And so, okay. So he said yes. And then we're like, oh my God, we got Ian McKellen. He's going to be Horatio. This is going to be wonderful. Let's fill out the rest of our cast. But wait, there's more. Danny DeVito said yes. Sylvester Stallone said yes. Raven Simone said yes. We're like, what are we going to do? We couldn't afford all of them. We only had enough just barely to afford Ian McKellen. And so it was either to tell them no, and I didn't know how to tell Danny DeVito or Raven Simone or Sylvester Stallone no. So I went back to my investors and I said, could we get more money? We've got a much bigger cast. And so they said, okay. So we said, okay. And then we got a call from John Krasinski's people. Now, I didn't know who John Krasinski was. So it was 2014. I never saw The Office. And so I was like, I don't know. And my casting director was like, trust me, he's really good. Okay, fine. So I fly out to Los Angeles to meet with Danny DeVito, Raven Simone, and John Krasinski. Danny and Raven are fantastic.
Yeah.
John Krasinski is perfect. I was just like, oh my God, because I didn't know who he was. He was funny. He was pleasant. He was exactly what we were looking for. We still didn't have Zoe.
Now at this point, did you guys already have character designs?
We did, yeah. The character designs and everything were being done concurrently. But by the time we were recording, we had the character designs already done. And that's why when people are like, oh, Chesterfield looks just like Danny DeVito, it wasn't. It was just.
It just happened to happen.
It just, yeah.
I'm telling you, the lead looks just like John Krasinski.
Owen does. Like I could
him.
see John Krasinski looking just like that if he decided to sport the purple.
It's funny. Like I said, I think it's like the same thing happens with dogs. They kind of take on that personality of their owners and stuff. These characters took on the personalities of their actors. But we were there. And John, John's packing up, and he's just, and I'm in the sound room with him, and everybody else is in the recording booth. And he's like, yeah, he goes, I just, had a great time. I said, oh my God, you were amazing. And he says, yeah, he says, I just want to let you know. He goes, my wife just thought the script was so funny and so cute, and she just absolutely loved it. I was like, oh, well, thank her for me. And I turned and walked away because I didn't know who he was married to. Why would I know who John Krasinski's married to?
Right, you didn't even know the guy.
Yeah, the microphones were hot, and everybody comes running into the room, and they're like,
dude, what are you doing?
You want to work in the film? I'm like, why are you asking this poor guy why his wife wants to work in the film? I'm sure we'll find somebody eventually, So he's like, sure. He picks up his phone. He goes, hey, baby, you want to be in the film? And she's like, yeah. He goes, boom. That's how Emily Blunt came on the film. And,
wow. So that means that you potentially, not only did you have Magneto, but you potentially have the Reed Richards and
Mr.
Sue
Fantastic,
Storm,
Invisible,
fingers crossed,
Yeah,
of the MCU. Oh
Yeah.
my God! If they are Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman,
yeah,
yes, I will fall in love with the Fantastic Four all over again.
Absolutely.
There's a deleted scene from the Drunk Review where I sort of like stumble onto the revelation that husband and wife were in this together as husband and wife, and I'm like, that's so cute. I was like, that one's on the cutting room floor there.
Oh, okay.
I wish it would have been.
You can hear it in their performance.
You really can.
Yeah.
So they got in together. So I flew out a few weeks later for their first time working together. And do you remember the scene where they're driving from the funeral and Mackenzie says, I'm hungry. And they go, oh, there's a fruit stand. Okay. So that's what I wrote was Mackenzie says, I'm hungry. And Zoe says, oh, well, there's a fruit stand. That's all I wrote. Now what's in the movie is because they ad-libbed everything. So it was, oh, well, she's hungry. Well, see if you have anything. Oh, I don't have anything. Check over here. There's nothing. Look under the sunglasses. I'm looking under the sunglasses. And you see the cars slowly drifting off the road.
That is parenting 101.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then she's like, oh, look, a fruit stand. And then she starts to sing, I like to eat. We're just sitting there going, none of this is in the script. I don't know what's going on, but I love it, And so, but I've even, if you go to the Instagram page for Animal Crackers, which I'm running all the social media, but if you go to the Instagram page, you'll see one of the clips because you'll see me in the video with my iPhone recording all of this, and you'll see Emily starts singing that like they didn't prepare it. And then it takes a couple beats for John to go, oh, we're singing this song now. And then he kind of jumps in. And so all of it was improvised, all of it. And she was laughing because John just makes her laugh all the time. So she's laughing all the time. So we just kept that in there. So like when he's going, your dad has me eating dog biscuit. I know, but for a job. So I'm thinking about that for a minute. And then she starts laughing. We just kept it in. And so now you'll see Zoe laughing all the time in the movie because they were just so naturally funny together. Right. They'd never worked on anything together. So this was so fun for them and it was so fun for us. And we wanted to have that kind of stay in there. And, I think it works.
I think those two as a couple are like a national treasure.
They really are. They really are.
Yeah. They're wonderful and so positive and upbeat, and they do such great things for so many people. I really like the work that they do.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's crazy just how talented they are, but how down to earth they are too, because you hear all these stories about these super talented people and they're just so not human. Like they just don't live on the same planet as everyone else. But then you see, two of the most amazing actors on the planet, and they're just like, we're just people.
Yeah, they come in, they give you a hug, they sit down on the couch, ask you how you're doing, ask about the family. They signed stuff for me. They sent videos to my wife couldn't come out, so she's recorded a video. But they're just normal people. Now they're normal people who, and I would hate to be a celebrity because like they can't go outside, they can't go to the mall, they can't do stuff without being swamped by people. Yeah. And so they do have to protect their privacy a lot, and so I learned, I gained a lot of respect for them because of what they have to deal with. They've got kids, I just, it's good and it's bad, and I think it takes a special kind of person. And I really thought the actors were going to be more involved in the production of the film. I thought that they would be, hey, here's the latest cut. What do you think? That kind of thing. Right. And they're not. They're in. They do their job. They're out. And you don't see them.
So there was no Edward Norton sort of stuff going on.
No. But I think that's why I fell in love with the musicians. See, the musicians, they love the movies, and so they wanted to know what was going on. Like they would hey, I've got a tour stop in Nashville. Can we come by and come hang out? Yeah, sure. So like you're hanging out with Huey Lewis and Michael Bublé and Toad the Wet Sprocket and Howard Jones and they're just so eager to create with you. And I think musicians also understand the dread of a blank page, and because they create something out of nothing. Actors, you prepare their lines, you prepare their clothes, you prepare everything, and then they work from that. But a musician, there's nothing, and then they create music. And I feel that way with my writing and with my art. And there was a connection between us that I really bonded with them over, and I thought there was going to be that with the actors, and there are a few actors who, of course, still stay connected with me, and they're still encouraging me. But it's just the musicians. I think I just connected with them really well, and I really enjoyed that part.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was actually curious about how you did the voice recordings for the actors. Did they all come to your studio, or?
No, I had to go wherever they were. So like for Ian McKellen and for one session with Emily Blunt, it was London. And then for Gilbert Gottfried and Harvey Fierstein and Wallace Shawn was New York. And then everybody else was Los Angeles. So I was flying all over the place. Yeah. The last time I saw John and Emily was on the set of Mary Poppins, as they were starting up, recording for that. That was when we did our last little cuts, and then the EPK, which is just the interviews with them. And so I think that was 2017. And I remember John was, he was saying, he's like, man, we just had, it's kind of like a goodbye. We had such a fun time working on this. We liked it so much. We're going to do our first live action movie together. I'm calling it A Quiet Place. And I was like, oh, good luck, thinking my movie will be out a year before that comes out. He was just getting ready for pre-production. And she was going to do Mary Poppins first, and then they were going to go and film. And then my film just got stuck for 3 years, just, in the quagmire of Hollywood.
Well, and so how do you decide, how do you go from we are going to go straight to DVD to Netflix getting involved? Is that a result of the voice cast?
It was the cast. Yeah. When Stallone and DeVito came on, we're like, okay, this can't be a direct DVD. And then when Emily Blunt came on, we're like, okay, we need to go and borrow $5 more million just so we can make the film look good, because everybody's going, okay, this has to be theatrical. So it wasn't my choice so much as the investors and pretty much everybody, who, including the actors, were like, this can't be. None of them want to come on to a direct-to-DVD. Right. This was, again, 2015. And streaming wasn't an option at the time. So this has to be a theatrical release. And that's really what killed the film was that. I mean, if this film was done now, it would have been released via Netflix, and I would have been spared all of that hardship and all of that pain, of trying to get the film out into theaters. Yeah. It was just the quality of the cast really made it. You can't put a cast like this on a DVD. Is basically
and it's something that you could never get done in a live action film either, right? Like it's sort of the magic of animation that you're able to like bounce around the planet and record with these different people.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's the great thing about animation is they can come in their sweats. They don't have to rehearse their lines. They don't have to put on makeup. They don't have to get dressed. They don't have to be under lights. They just come in for 4 hours. They hang out. I mean, it's really, really relaxed. I mean, it's not that there's not a lot of work, but they work for 2 hours, and then we have a lunch break, and you're just hanging out with Ian McKellen or Danny DeVito, and you're eating soup, and you're just kind of just chilling and whatnot. And it's like, all right, well, let's go back to work. And then they go and they do it. And if, as many breaks as they want to, they can. As many takes as they want to do, they can. And it's just, and there's candy sitting next to them and drinks. And it's a very comfortable and fun thing. So it doesn't pay as much as a live action, but you also don't have to be in shape. You don't have to, it's just so comfortable. And so I could see actors really wanting to do that more. And
geez, I want to do it. I want to be a voice actor guy. I mean,
yeah.
So let's talk about the sequel. I know that it's not official, right? But you have some pitch ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I already wrote it up. I was kind of looking at it. One of the things, if you look at Animal Crackers, the version that's on Netflix is not edited. That's just an unedited. That's every shot we ever did. It's about 15 to 20 minutes too long, I think, especially in the beginning. And I think
that some of that, and this was what I like sort of harped on in the drunk review, right, is the genealogy stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that part of the reason why I got so focused on that stuff is because of those like 15 minutes at the beginning that makes the family such an important part of it. And
here's what happened. So we did an animated short for Harvey Weinstein, and you could find it online somewhere, but it's Owen in the garage. And this is before we had Carter Goodrich, so it's different designs. But Owen in the garage, and he's looking for the birthday present for Mackenzie, and you just hear Zoe kind of calling in from inside the house because again we couldn't afford to model Zoe, and so it was just but James Arnold Taylor plays Owen, and Tara Strong plays Zoe, and Lydia plays Mackenzie. And so when we were doing the direct-to-DVD, we were going to have James play Owen and Tara play Zoe. That was what we were looking at doing. And of course, Lydia still wound up playing Mackenzie. When Ian McKellen came on, that was part of the plan. But when Stallone and DeVito came on board, it was like, uh-oh. And then Raven Simone came on. It was like, okay, this is getting bigger. And I remember Tara Strong telling me how she was cast and she recorded the entire movie of Snow White for Hoodwinked. And then Harvey Weinstein came on board and said, no, we got to have big name stars, and replaced her entirely with Anne Hathaway. And I just remember her, because she's so incredibly talented. I remember just the disappointment that you can just tell that no matter how good her performance is, it's based on the name of that. And so when suddenly John Krasinski came on board, and then Emily Blunt, it was like they just got pushed off again. And they were the ones who believed in me at the beginning. They were the ones who trusted me at the beginning. And so I felt a responsibility to create Buffalo Bob and Talia. And so I created that for them, and I created this whole backstory for them. And I'm only realizing this now in hindsight, 5 years later, right? Or 6 years later, the hindsight of that my emotions and my passions clouded that, because the original story was just a guy working at a dog biscuit factory gets a phone call, some long lost uncle you've never heard of before died, and you've inherited a circus, which is a very clean movie. It worked really well. And then you discover who this uncle is and Horatio and everything. And at the end, you get Buffalo Bob, or you get Old Blue is actually still alive. And that's the first time. And that would have been like 3 lines that they would have had. And so I think my emotions got the best of me. And so I created this whole backstory, which I can't go to everybody, all the millions of people who are watching the movie, and tell them that, And so it's just, but I had heard over those 3 years that the film was sitting there that the reaction was, the beginning's a little bit long. And so we did a cut. We did an edit where we trimmed it. We kept enough of it to where it was like, instead of 15 minutes, it was 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so it was quick. So you got the backstory, and then right into here, and then we cut a lot of the funeral scene, and so it moved very quickly because the movie really takes off when Owen turns into a hamster.
Right.
From there on out, I think it runs pretty good on cruise control, and I think we really stuck the landing. I really love the ending, but we trimmed about 15 to 20 minutes off, and it was a really good edit. But unfortunately, I wasn't the one who delivered the film. It was somebody else, and they delivered the entire. It's like the Snyder cut,
right?
And so, on one hand, I'm going, well, everybody gets to see the whole movie, and on the other hand, I'm going, of course, when there's reviews, it's because of that. But there was an emotional reason to that, and I don't regret doing it for the reason that I did it.
It gives you story potentials, at least moving forward, right? Because you can still tackle those issues of parenting.
Well, I mean, I'm a writer and I love story. Like for me personally, sometimes it's like, the more story, the better, so long as it has a decent flow.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess I haven't run into an issue yet of having to make so many different edits that it's like,
Yeah, and I totally understand what you're saying about these folks were originally going to be a part of it, and you didn't want to push them out altogether.
Right.
And,
that just shows straight up loloyalty, man.
Yeah,
that's
a noble cause.
Absolutely.
Well, better for us. It is basically the three of us are ever going to know that. So and whoever's listening, you know what I'm saying? It's like it's not like I'm putting that out publicly. Right. I don't even think I've because I've only just come to that realization as to why, because I knew I was fighting for it. I was fighting against Tony Bancroft. I was fighting against Dean Laurie, my co-writer, my co-director. I was fighting over, no, we've got to keep this in there. But it didn't click as to why I was fighting for it until about maybe 2 weeks ago. Now that everything is done, it's settled, and I've been kind of just rehashing the whole making of the movie so many times, talking to people and whatnot, that I realized why I did it. And so I think it was, like I said, it was a good reason to do it, but it was a rookie mistake. And so as I was looking at that, to go back to the sequel, as I was looking at writing a sequel, I was realizing, you know what? I think because I like my books, I like to take my time with the stories. And I think that works better for series more so than it does for a film. And so I actually wrote the sequel as I wrote a pilot episode for the sequel. I've got the whole arc, which could be the movie if need be, but I kind of wrote it as a sequel because give it some time to breathe. Because I really love, and you can see it in movie, is I make sure that Binkley has an arc. I make sure Brock has an arc, that Horatio has an arc. I make sure, and everybody's arc kind of gets settled. And I wanted to make sure that everybody was important because it went with the theme of family, and it went with and I hate two-dimensional characters who are just there for one particular reason. I want them to have a reason for being. Horatio has a very valid reason. He's not just the villain. He's a guy who was on the losing end in his ego of a love triangle.
And his ego can't let him give it away. Yeah.
Yeah. And so everybody has their reasonings for doing what they're doing. Woodley has his reasoning for treating Owen the way that he did. And Owen has his reasons for staying at that job because he believes that that's what's best for his family. Zoe is doing what everybody's got reasons, and to me at least, they're full characters. And to be able to do that in a series, you get to really, really explore the different personalities. And so right now I'd love to do it as a series, but if you do it as a series, the cast isn't going to come back. Right. Because they're John Krasinski and Emily Blunt and Sylvester Stallone are not going to come back for 15 episodes on Netflix, but they will come back for a
couple
movie.
Of hours for a movie.
Yeah, and so that's essentially where I am. If I wind up doing it, it could be either or. But the story, just quickly, the story revolves around. It takes place a year later, and Mackenzie she loves being a monkey for the performances, and so as long as she does her homework, she can come and practice and perform on the weekends and whatnot. And so she gets home every day and she just throws her bag off. She grabs a monkey cookie and she goes and she can't wait to do it. One day, Binkley and Woodley, whose cookie company is doing great, they want to expand and they're going to Germany for a convention, and they want Owen to kind of work his magic cookies to kind of help sell like this conglomerate. And they've never been away from Mackenzie before. And Chesterfield's like, don't worry, she's fine. We'll take care of her. So they convince
all that Chesterfield.
Yeah, they convince Owen and Zoe to just go have a good time. So they get on the plane, they go. And as they're flying away, we again, I'm mixing a little bit, but we find out that Mackenzie took a monkey cookie so she could practice. Very innocent. She just wants to practice, not realizing that as soon as she eats that monkey cookie, which she does, that her human cookie is going to be in the box with Owen, who's flying to Germany. And later on, while Owen is doing the whole demonstration, look, I'm a hippo. Look, I'm this. Look, I'm that. And they're like, how does it work? He's like, oh, and you remember where Chesterfield takes the cookies and he tosses them into the toilet?
Yeah.
Owen does that with Mackenzie's human cookie in there. And so now it's one thing when you got old Buffalo Bob and Xena and Talia, but you can't let your daughter remain as a monkey for the rest of her life. So now they've got to go and find the source of the cookies, the magic.
So they can.
I
was about to say, or are they going to have
interested in?
Yeah, really. That's even better than what I was thinking. I was like, so now they have to go on this excursion into the sewers, and they either run into the Chuds or they run into the Ninja Turtles. Either way, that's some mad camp fun.
There we
go. I am fascinated by like the magic of the movie itself. Like, I think it's magical realism in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
And I really like that. And I'm actually really curious about who blessed these cookies or wherever they came from originally. And so, yeah, that sounds super compelling.
I'm going to bring back Esmeralda, and she's going to look the same. 60 years later, she's going to look the same. And everybody's going to be like, you looked exactly the same. How old are you? She's going to be like, I'm 73. How old were you back then? I was only 22. She was a heavy smoker, so she looked like that. It's got Harvey Fierstein's voice, and it's just. And
I love because I especially love his voice, especially in Independence Day. David, why did I send my mother to Atlanta? I love his voice.
Dude, he was the best. I remember, my job is to direct, apparently. So I'm in New York. And I'm directing Harvey Fierstein, and I must have said something, and he turns to me and he goes, honey, I've done this before, okay? and my response was, but I haven't. It's my first movie. He's like, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. He was just so nice, and he's like a hurricane when he comes in the room. And that was another thing. It was like, if I got rid of that opening, I lose Esmeralda, because Esmeralda's role was originally Petunia the Fat Lady's role. So in other words, she was that character during the day. She was the one who hands Owen the box of cookies because there wasn't a Buffalo Bob. Right. So when I moved her there, and then we went, oh, maybe we should cut that, I would have lost Harvey Fierstein.
Oh, can do that.
Yeah, I had so many reasons not to. But like I said, that's what I would love to do is to build out the world a little bit. I love world building. I love stories, and I love the logic of the cookies and how they work. Yeah. And I love once you establish that, then you could start having fun. Like, what if you ate a piece of a cookie, and that kind of thing. And so what if you took several parts of a cookie and you kind of not glued them together, but you kind of piece them together. You can make a dragon, that things like that. And so I just, it's that same thing where okay, now you've made something. How do you break it? And you kind of play around with that. And I think that's why I really like the ending so much, because now I've established the world, I've established the rules. Now let's break it and let's make these these mutants and whatnot. And it was
Turtles.
Really
Well, and the film has been incredibly successful for Netflix.
Yeah,
I
it's
can't
in the
imagine
top 10 in the world.
Right?
It is. I just checked the stats, and it is the #1 animated movie for July and August in the world.
That is amazing.
Netflix has got to get on the horn and
I
get
hope,
something. You know.
I hope. It's an amazing thing where you're looking at. I've accomplished something. I did this. I got the film out.
Your art has been looked at by millions of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is this the last thing I'll ever do in animation? Am I going to go work at Home Depot tomorrow? I mean, but I mean, it's really scary because I don't know what I live in Franklin, Tennessee. I don't have an agent. I don't have a manager. I don't have that connection to sell me, and I don't sell myself, so I don't know what to do about that. And
I think artists in general, and Brian and I are both writers too, like every time you finish a project, there's that dread that sort of sets in that's like, what if that was my last idea, or you know, or what if I can never write another story. I think about
I'm in that like crazy right now.
There's this great section from Salman Rushdie's autobiography where he talks about meeting Kurt Vonnegut for the first time, and Rushdie had just published Midnight's Children, which was this huge novel for him. And Kurt Vonnegut says, "Are you serious about this writing thing?" And he goes, "Yes, sir, I think I am." And he goes, "Well, then you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do when you run out of stories to tell."
Oh God!
Because that's when the real work starts, right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I got to ask you this, and I'd be remiss if I didn't, because we're 46 minutes into this. How hard was it for you not to slip an inconceivable into Wallace Shawn's dialogue? How hard was it?
I did it. I did it. Wallace wouldn't say it.
Oh, gotcha.
The closest I got was him to say, not even if I was poisoned, and that was the antidote. That was as close as I could get to a side reference. He did sign a painting I did. I did a painting of Stallone, McKellen, and Wallace Shawn. And so I had Rocky, Gandalf, and the Sicilian. Yeah.
Yeah, Vicini.
And Vicini. Thank you. But yeah, he wouldn't sign inconceivable on it.
I guess after 30 years, it's like, all right, man, enough.
That'd be like going to Tom Wilson and asking him to call you butthead, you know, or something. You know, there's you know, whereas Stallone is like, he was shadow boxing. He was telling me stories. He was, you know, he loved it. Ian McKellen signed, you know, because it was to my kids. He signed the painting to Brendan and Logan loved Ian McKellen, and he did Gandalf's rune, you know, that he learned to draw and everything. And so it just depends on the actor
the mood and.
Yeah, but
because he probably has people coming up to him on the street. Hey, say it.
Yeah. Well, and it's the same as like John Krasinski. I can't imagine how often he gets just bombarded with The Office stuff. Right?
Yeah. They're like, how come you're not with Jenna Fisher?
Right.
Oh my God.
So have you watched The Office now, or have you still abstained?
I've tried. The Office is those cringy shows. I can't stand cringy shows, like embarrassing things. Yeah. So I stay away from it. My son watched, I think, a season of it. And but it's one of those things where I'm sure it's funny. It's just not my thing.
Yeah. You're a wholesome guy.
I am.
But I'm kind of the same way. When I see something really embarrassing about to happen in a movie or a show, I have to turn it off. I'm like, oh man, I can't. If I was in that situation, I would just die.
Yeah, like something about Mary. Like something like that, you know, it's just kills me inside because you're just like, oh my God, this is too painful. You know, the 40-Year Virgin, you know, those movies just destroy me. And everybody's like, isn't that the funny? I don't like laughing at people who are just miserable and everything is going wrong.
You would probably really enjoy The Office if you could cut out all the Michael Scott stuff and just get the Jim and Pam.
Yeah,
if you could just get to where they're sort of teasing Michael for being Michael, maybe. But when it's like Michael doing something cringy, it's like, that's hard.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Scott, as a big Spider-Man fan, how did you feel about Into the Spider-Verse?
I think it's probably the best animated movie I've ever seen.
That's what we said.
Yeah.
That's what we said.
You know, I watched it and I thought that was what I was trying to do in 2002 because my Spider-Man was the first, probably only CGI animated Spider-Man. So that was how I got the job. Was Marv Wolfman, who created Teen Titans and Blade. He was the one who was trying to help me get the job to do Spider-Man. He knew it was my childhood dream. I was painting it. I was penciling it. I was doing everything. He goes, why don't you try taking your day job of animation and applying it to comic books? And that's how I got the gig, was a CGI animated look. But it was 2001 when I was doing it. The book came out in 2002. And the technology just wasn't there. I was pushing it as hard as I could, but it wasn't. Seeing that movie, I was like, man, that's it. That's what I saw in my head, but I just didn't have the technology to do it, you know?
Well, I've just never seen anything like that.
Nothing like that. And you know what's great is, see, I remember when Miles Morales was first introduced, and I was like, oh, come on, really? You can't just like make a brand new character. But Miles Morales took on a life of his own because he is such a unique character. Yeah. And he's probably one of the most, I think that a lot of characters, like when you get an Artemis Cho, they're trying to mirror that, but it's like Miles Morales is like a once in a lifetime type of thing. I don't think you can do that with other characters. Like even when they're trying to do it with X-23, it's like, all right, but she's female Wolverine. You know? It's just not the same.
I think, we're looking at this. I don't want to see another Peter Parker origin story again.
Right.
I mean, come on. I've seen it with 3 different actors. I haven't. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, and I have not seen. Was it Far From Home?
Yeah.
And I love Mysterio. And I want to see it. I just haven't got around to it because I think I'm kind of.
It's almost the same thing.
It is, and I don't know if it's also because I'm 51 too. But that Into the Spider-Verse was just. It was amazing. It was amazing.
I noticed that as I get older, I get a little bit more finicky because it's like, I've seen all this. Give me something new that will make me feel like what 10-year-old me felt like when I first saw this.
And Into the Spider-Verse is absolutely that thing.
It really is. From
the last few years. It's the best animated film I've ever seen, and it's probably one of the best comic book movies I've ever seen.
Yeah. It's probably one of the best depictions of Spider-Man. Period. That I've seen in a long time
for sure. Yeah. I mean, as good as
Tom Holland is, and I think that I've always said that Tobey Maguire made the superior Peter Parker, Andrew Garfield was the superior Spider-Man, and Tom Holland brought them both together.
Yeah,
and I thought it was great.
Yeah,
but Into the Spider-Verse, and we're getting Miles Morales, we're getting something different, and it's fresh and it's new. It was just like, thank you.
Yeah.
And also it's such a ambitious endeavor to try to introduce the multiverse like that, and they did such a nice job. But we don't need to take too much more of your time geeking out over here about Spider-Man movies.
I can talk about Spider-Man all day. I love it.
Same. Oh man, I still remember watching the old 70s Spider-Man show that was done in the same vein as the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
And even that, I really enjoyed it because for the time, that was the best we were going to get. That wasn't a cartoon. So.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying I grew up with the '60s cartoon, so I love that.
Did you guys ever stumble across this weird video on YouTube? It's a series of videos called Italian Spider-Man.
I remember seeing an Indian one, but
my kid probably came across it because my kid trolls YouTube so much that he's like, Dad, did you see about this? No, Dad only watches like the top 10 list and everything wrong with certain movie stuff. I don't do
Italian Spider-Man is like this super like Italian cliched guy. He's got like the bushy mustache, and he's got his Spider-Man costume is really just like a sweatsuit with like a crudely drawn spider on the chest, and he rolls around and just shoots people with sawed-off shotguns and stuff. It's wild.
Wow. That is intense. That almost
Yeah.
sounds like
Wait, sweatsuit, mustache, sawed-off shotgun. Yeah, it sounds Italian. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and like one of the scenes opens up, and like there are three chicks like in bed with him asleep, and he's just smoking a cigarette. And
that sounds like the tattooed alien fighters of Beverly Hills version of
Oh,
right, yeah, that's
Spider-Man.
exactly what it is. Yeah.
And the fact that I still remember that just goes to show the concussions haven't knocked all the geek out of me.
Well, Scott, are you working on anything else other than trying to get the sequel made?
I've got several of my other ones that we're trying to get funding for. In the meanwhile, I'm just trying to stay sane. I'm working on little stuff here and there. We're putting together an art of book, which looks really cool, and I'm painting, and I'm just trying to. I mean, this pandemic is crazy. Like,
Yeah.
The kids, our boys are now 17. They're missing their senior year of school, and so it's just. I think every day feels like Groundhog Day, and I'm trying to get something done, and I'm working on stuff every day. But it's little stuff like music videos and whatnot. But I've already put in all of the work. I've already got 5 or 6 movie scripts. I've already got 18 comic books finished and published. I've got 30 IPs ready. I've done everything, so now it's just kind of waiting, which I'm not very good at.
Yeah.
I hate doing it, and I want to get back to work. It's been 3 years since I've done anything. It's been 3 years of me just waiting for this movie to come out, so that way hopefully I could do another film if I ever do another one. So
yeah, I'm a little bit like that. Like I have a ton of projects started. But like I feel like I need to start putting bows on things before I start anything new, and like you said, the pandemic, man, like I've been having like artistic existential crises by the week.
I'm kind of getting that too. Like I the one thing that's been keeping me sane is exercise.
Yeah,
because I've been dedicating myself to eating right and doing my DDP yoga and all that. So that's keeping me sane. But it's like, why can't I write anything?
Yeah.
Nothing is there.
You need a job. That's the thing is I'm tired of doing art for myself. I've got those drawers back there are filled with hundreds of paintings. I paint all the time. I've written scripts. I've made books. I've created so much stuff. I'm tired of doing stuff for me. Yeah. I don't want any more stuff for me. I want a job. I want an assignment. I want a paycheck. And I think, after 3 years, I'm going stir crazy and I'm doubting everything. It's great that this movie came out. It's great that it did well, but I don't know.
It's time for that next thing.
Yeah. So it's great when you're self-motivated and you're doing, you guys are writing for yourselves. You guys are doing that. That's great because you have to keep doing it. Yeah. But after some point, you just want to take on a job, and I don't care if it's a low paying or even free job. If it's something, I might just do it, and just to
get something else.
Just to do something for somebody else rather than myself. Like I got so many paintings up on the wall. My wife says the house looks like Buca de Beppo. She's like, stop painting enough, it's too much.
That's great. That's kind of like me. I'm starting to get projects where it's like I want to start doing voiceover stuff for audiobooks. And cousin of mine passed away, and she left me all of her VHSs. So now I'm like, I went and got a old VCR out of storage and setting it up so I can start converting things. And my wife is like, so where are we going to have space for all these VHSs? It's like, not now, devil woman. There's things to be done.
Right. Like, I think that we're all just kind of like looking for something to do just to occupy our brains because, man, like I would love to just come in here. I'm like halfway through recording an album and I'm halfway through finishing another novel and I'm halfway through a billion things, but when I sit down to do that work, I just need something just to bide my time, while all of this sort of peripheral noise is going on.
Yeah. Well, I'm in a crappy holding pattern because I'm in a republishing mode. So all of my stuff, I'm switched publishers. So it's like, all right, well, these things have been edited. They're ready to be published. Now this book needs to just be edited and it's ready to be published.
Yeah.
Well, now I guess I'll do the audio book for the one book that's out, and maybe, just maybe, something will come along. But there's other stuff that we want you to write too. Yeah, I'll figure it out.
And then we're both like, you know,
We're doing this show.
I guess the best that I've really done over the last few months has been inventing those drunk reviews.
Yes, inventing the drunk reviews and doing the podcast.
Yeah, that's been the single gift that the pandemic has given me, because all I've had to do is sit around and have a whiskey and watch Netflix. So.
Gotta love it.
Scott, we will let you get out of here, but first, let's tell the folks at home where to find you. You are at Sava32 on Instagram and Sava on Twitter, and also your studio, Blue Dream Studios, at bluedreamstudios.com, where people can learn all that they want about Scott Christian Sava, who also, Brian, has the most poetic and endearing Amazon author bio that I've ever read.
That
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, you wrote it like a storybook, or whoever wrote it wrote it like
awesome.
a storybook. Yeah, it was nice.
Now I'm hooking up on Scott with Scott on Instagram. Now I already got him on the Twitter
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, the Instagram, that one is just like pictures of family. If you want to go to S Sava Art, if you want to put that one up.
Sava Art. Gotcha.
Sava. There we are.
Yeah, that's the one I'll post on, because I haven't posted on the other one in forever.
I gotcha.
And
Cool.
follow. Oh, and there's Animal Crackers. So I'll follow.
Yeah.
That's right. And of course, the film Animal Crackers, #1 animated film globally on Netflix for both
Check
July
it
and
out.
August. Yeah,
If
watch
your
it. It is
kids-
a good
if-
time.
It really is. If your kids are driving you nuts, put this on and then go have a whiskey sour.
Yeah, but do not think that it's an advertisement for 23andMe. Not a lot of ancestral questions will be answered by the end.
That was because that was the one thing too. I'm watching. I'm like, this is so great. Where did he come from?
I'm
Yeah,
like,
I know.
this,
But see, if the movie started off with a guy who gets a phone call that a long lost uncle died, you wouldn't ask who his dad is.
That's true.
But
That's true.
because I did that came, and I had no idea. So everybody's been asking me. I've actually got here. Look on the chat. I've actually got a macro set up.
that's really funny.
I've had to
is
answer
so-
it enough times.
That is so
Well,
awesome.
and I was wondering if there's a chance that Danny DeVito is the father, and he's a third brother.
That would be so cool. That you want to talk about a plot twist, man?
Oh my god. Yeah, my dad.
Like maybe Danny DeVito got with Esmeralda, right? But
Or what if Frank Reynolds is his dad? I mean,
Right.
you never know.
I told Brian, we were chatting a little bit earlier. I was like, like kids' movies aren't really supposed to dig too much into genealogy. Like adults watching that movie are the only people that are going to care that we don't know who his dad is.
Yeah.
Kids are not going to care too much. But I still had a blast watching
Plus,
it.
his dad wasn't even in the circus, so who cares about that guy?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, but I thought that his dad was in the circus because I thought his dad was Buffalo Bob the whole time, and I thought that,
after I answer who Owen's parents are, everybody's going to wonder where Zoe's mom is, because you only see Mr. Woodley.
She
Yeah.
There's always going to be something, people.
there's always
Yeah.
going to be something.
Yes, you
Well,
don't. Dad.
Sometimes you just have to let your imagination solve the answers.
And there's where a series goes too.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Stick around for just 1 second.
Okay.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in for this special edition of the Plotaholics podcast. We'll talk to you again real soon. Plotaholics, ripping plots apart for you.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.